So you're a professional ski instructor, you're a coach, you are a speaker coach. And I know that also you do men's work as well as relationship type work. So you have competence in a lot of different areas. I'm curious to know, at what point did you choose coaching as part of your dharmic path? All right, I know that I'm pretty good, but I'm going to devote my life to this. And let me contextualize that even more. It's like any relationships. First, you got curious, and then you get passionate about it. Then you decide to get married, then it's a devotion. So there's that any kind of journey that you take on in any kind of relationships. At what point did you say, I'm going to double down on coaching and speaking and being an author as part of my path?
Love the question. I know that very early on, like literally in college, I knew that I was meant to speak. I felt it. Like I listened to a man who would eventually become a dear person to me and a mentor, Zig Ziglar. I heard a tape of his. Somebody handed me a tape of his about the science of, or something about how to stay motivated. And I thought, oh my gosh, I love the way this guy talks. And I love the image of me standing in front of a group of people and sharing this. And I started speaking. Like I took a public speaking course and I started taking every opportunity I could and every opportunity to hone that skill. I was a DJ. I hosted talk shows. As soon as I could get my FCC approval, I was doing radio shows. And then just every opportunity I could to take the stage. I did stand up for 2 years just to get myself over the stage fright things. And meanwhile, following whatever professional, like I started in banking and then law school, and always seeking opportunities to speak and share. Then from the perspective of, this is what I've learned from other teachers. And some people call that the reporter style of teaching. I went out and did my research and then shared the results of my research. And then as I developed some experience doing that very early on, I started creating my own frameworks for motivation and how to stay motivated, things like that. And what happened was, this was all before there was a coaching industry. This was back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. So I had just graduated from law school, started my law practice, and I had the great fortune of having as a client for a little real estate transaction representing this man to purchase his home. He was a CEO of a company, and we began to talk, and he was a real fan of personal development. And so we started comparing notes about all the great teachers that we loved in personal development. And he was fascinated by my fascination. And he said, my sales team hears me talk about this all the time. Would you come and talk to my sales team? And I was like, of course, I would love to. And as a result of that, they asked me, how do we stay connected to this material? We just love this conversation. It keeps us inspired. We do better when we're plugged into this conversation. And my first coaching program was born. He hired me to work with them on an ongoing basis. And their performance reflected that, and they made more money, the company did better, et cetera. And this was, again, before I don't remember ever hearing the expression executive coach at the time. And so I started doing that, coaching people to higher levels of performance. And I picked up a client here who needed to hone her golfing game, actually. And then I picked up another sales team. And then I picked up another athlete, and then a football player, and then a doctor's office and a hair salon, and just kind of turned into something. It wasn't intentional. I didn't say, I'm going to build a coaching practice. It just happened that my gifts were being called for. And then had the good fortune to pair up with a colleague of mine who we had met on the speaking path, and Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Dennis Waitley. And we created this thing called the Coaching Staff. It was the first online coaching portal. And it was a real opportunity for me to work with people who I admired for a decade. And that's probably the first time I actually called myself a coach. I'd always looked at myself as an enthusiastic guide. I get people excited about stuff. And then I really learned the ins and outs of, okay, if somebody wants something, you establish where they are, where they want to be, and the bridge to get there, and then support them along the way to get there. And like my first official coaching program came into form. And then at the same time, my life experiences kept up with me. I went through a very painful divorce and ended up with sole custody of my kids. And that experience alone as a full-time single father, a lawyer with 2 law offices, having a coaching practice, like managing all of that gave me some real material to share on stage. And so I started writing and speaking more. And again, this is really before the internet exploded and became such a real part of all of our lives. So it's been a very gradual, there's no meteoric overnight success story. It's a very gradual process of my competencies, and the audience for my gifts grew along the way.